You're not stuck. You're not lost. You're not confused. And you're not depressed. You are being rediscovered. I'm Shanice. I will be your host in this episode. And today we're going to be talking about this is episode 3, season 2 on rebuilding her life after trauma. And today, our topic we will be talking about rediscovery. Rediscovery is not a process of you unbecoming. Well, it's not a process of you changing, but it's a process of you becoming who you already are. It's a process of you shedding off the old mindsets, the old things, the old habits, the old comfort zones, the old relationships, the old perspectives, the old beliefs, the old oaths, the old inner vows, the old perspectives, like I was saying, the old identities, the old um the old anything, the things that no longer serve you. It is the process of you shedding those old things off of you and you stepping into who you really are as your authentic self, as the core of your being. You have been, I want to talk about soul fragmentation before I get in the process, talking about the shedding process, right? When you know, first, I want to give you 5 signs that you are in need of rediscovery. Number one, you don't know who you are anymore. You look in the mirror. I remember it was a time and season I was in. This was back in 2017. I looked in the mirror and I did not know who was looking back at me. I didn't know her strengths. I didn't. Now, mind you, this is coming from someone that was solid in well, I thought I was solid in what I was called to do, because when I was younger, I always wanted to own a daycare. But the thing about it, I have always been an entrepreneur. Ever since I was 16 years old, I always knew I wanted to own. It was like I talk about it with my clients as your inner GPS, which is your God's positioning system. And I knew I always wanted to own a daycare. I knew I was gonna finish school. I knew I was gonna have a successful business. I just knew all these things was gonna happen to me. But it's like the more I tried to become those things, the more it got pulled away from me. And I was only going into a place, my life was spiraling downward and it wasn't going upward. And I couldn't understand what was happening. I was in the wrong relationship. I knew I was in the wrong relationship. I did not know how to get out. I was at the wrong job, accepting any type of job. And it wasn't the fact that I was accepting any type of job. Those was the jobs that I needed in that season of my life. But I did not know I don't was the jobs I needed in that season of my life. I felt like I needed more money and to make more money. But at the time, those jobs was what I needed in that time, in order it was conducive in order for me to create a life that I knew that would serve my children based on the season that I was in. I had a whole bunch of kids. So I couldn't go out and work at this, 9 to 5. I had to find a job that was flexible enough for me to be able to be the mother that I needed. Because God knew in my core of my being, I was all about family, finances, faith, and my future. He knew that, right? So in order for me to realign with that inner core, it was time for me to do some shedding, right? So the number one thing is I discovered that I no longer knew who I was. I was disconnected from my inner core. I was disconnected from my beliefs. I was disconnected from my morals. I had disconnected from them because I spent so many years trying to survive in relationships that I felt like I was lost, but in actuality, I was being discovered, right? And it's kind of like when you have this hidden talent and all of a sudden you step on a scene and nobody know where you came from. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like I did not know. It was like I had this hidden talent of writing, this hidden talent of speaking that I did not know was there. But as I started healing, God started unlocking different gifts that was inside of me that would actually make sense along with the will that He had for me. God's purpose for our life is not just the one bam Sam. Like how my pastor said, it unfolds as you grow with Him. And the closer you get with Him and the more you heal, the more you grow, it's like an unlocking that take place within you for you to walk in more. It's like you expand because you let go of those weight, or you let go of those habits or those relationships or those mindsets that no longer serve you. Number two, what used to work doesn't work anymore. right? So I got to a place in my life that what was working, me posting on social media. Now, this is a higher version of me. So the first part of my healing process is I did not know who I was anymore. Then when it was time for me to transition into more business, and not because my gift had grew to a certain amount that God was ready to expand me, but then I kept getting hit with confusion, with fear, and being afraid of stepping into my light or embracing who I was at the inner core of my being because I got afraid of losing those people that I had lived for so many years. So those things of me posting on social media and making those connections, they was no longer working anymore. The habit of me eating out of emotions was no longer helping anymore. The habit of me going back to old relationships was no longer working anymore. I was not feeling fulfilled, which led me to number three. I knew it was more for me. I knew it was more than posting on social media. I knew it was more than me doing podcasting. It was more for me doing YouTube. It was more for me of writing blogs. It was more for me. It was more, but I just did not know the more what it was. What led me to number four, I felt unfulfilled. Then I found myself in a cycle of anxiety, depression, and burnout because the thing that used to bring me passion, the thing that unlocked my voice, was now the very thing that I didn't want to do anymore. I didn't want to do podcasts. I didn't want to do blogging. Now, when I first started out blogging and podcasting was a sense of was a part of my healing process. I would heal through my blogs. I would heal through my speaking. Don't get me wrong. I still heal from that, and I still get a sense of fulfillment from that. But I knew it was more. And I'm in a season that I'm not only telling you it's time for you to rediscover another version of you, but I'm rediscovering another version of me because that version of me that I first broke out in 2017, it's time for me to come higher in what God wants me to do. And I'm gonna give you a bonus point. Loss of passion. I used to have a passion to do podcasting. I used to have a passion to study for it. I used to have a passion to write. I used to have a passion, but now it feels like a job to me. So I no longer feel fulfilled in these things. I know God is calling to something else, but what is it, right? And I'm gonna help us on this podcast to be transparent with you guys on how God is unfolding, unlocking another level within myself as I help you unlock another version of you. You may be at the firm part of rediscovery. You may be, what I'm saying, because there's different levels of rediscovery. You rediscover yourself at any age, right? When I was 27, I rediscovered that I had a gift in writing and speaking. I rediscovered that relationship no longer served me anymore. I rediscovered that, what I'm saying, that I was more than a mom. Now I'm in a season that I'm rediscovering that God, I feel like God is launching me in business, right? To actually launch my business and take it to the community. So he's launching me further, right? And what with that comes comes new territory. It comes new things, but it also comes a fear of what if I step out and things not this go wrong, or all these thoughts coming in my head. But it's like if I know deep down inside that God is launching me into that deep, what is holding me back, right? Then you have some people that's 60 years old, they're just not leaving a relationship that they felt that they needed to leave 40 years ago, and they rediscovering themselves as empty nesters after their kids leave. So we're always in the season, depending on what season you in and what season no longer serve you, because God is a God that he wants us to constantly evolve. That's what her stands for: heal, evolve, and resilient, right? And God always want us to evolve to a higher version of yourself. He never want us to stay the same because God has so much inside of us. And I notice when God is calling me higher, he takes me in a season of shedding, y'all. And it hurts. It hurts. And if I'm honest, a lot of times I felt like I was resisting change because change was unknown for me. I knew what was familiar, but I did not know what it would actually take for me to step into this high place. So he take you to a shedding process where he realigns, and he reclaim. Now I want to talk about soul fragmentation in the reclaiming part. I want to start with that. When you are reclaiming parts of you, it was parts of you that was broken off of you when you went through a season of trauma, when you went through a season of hardship. It's parts of you that you lost that God wants you to take you back for you to recover, right? So a lot of times when we go through hardship, we oftentimes suppress what happened to us. When in actuality, sometimes God allowed those hardship to happen to allow you to birth something greater in you. But instead of you actually going with without you actually going through and getting it, what end up happening is you end up losing parts of you, and God allow you to go back and reclaim it. Like in a relationship, I had become so dissociated from myself. I had dealt with identity. They call it the medical term, not the medical term. Well, the mental health term for it is um identity dissociation. I think it's identity dissociation, but it's just basically a part of you. You start dissociating so you won't deal with the reality of what's going on. And when I was in the relationship I was in, I found myself oftentimes dissociating from the environment. I remember me and my daughter was talking one day. She's 10 now, and me and my mom was talking, and she was like, "Shanice, maybe Dior, that's my daughter's name. Maybe she is clingy to you now because now you're giving her what you didn't give her when she was younger." I didn't get offended because I understood what my mama was saying. My mother was saying to me at that time that that nourishment that I was not giving my daughter when I was dissociated because I was locked in my room all the time, she's now getting it because she didn't get it when she was younger. So God has allowed me to reclaim and rebuild those seasons that motherly love that my daughter needed when she was 4 or 5 years old or 3 years old, 2 years old, and I was not able to give it to her because I was so disassociated and locked up in my own emotions that I couldn't even be the mother that she needed at that time. But now she have time to have that part of me that now she's clinging to me because she did not get that at that time. But now she understands I have time to actually reclaim that time with my mom, right? And actually have that relationship that she's supposed to have with me at 2, 3 years old. And so now she feels fulfilled in that area. So it's things that God would allow you to go back to for you to reclaim a part of you, not for you to go back in a sense of you going back to just go back. No, to allow you to reclaim identities and gifts and talents that you put down, that He put inside of you that you once dreamed about, but you put down because you went through trauma. So, what is it that you need to reclaim from soul fragmentation? Now, what is soul fragmentation? Soul fragmentation is what happens when parts of you become lost or broken off of you when you went through trauma. I'm gonna give you an example. Parts of you in the Bible, it tells us that God is is close to the brokenhearted and those that are crushed in spirit. But what happens? What broken heartness you have? Do you understand? Your heart is the eyes of your soul. So when your heart was broken in the area, parts of your soul now have been broken off. I remember it. This is in the inner healing and deliverance ministry that a lot of times the minister has to take the person through a process of reclaiming parts of their souls back to them. That could be you in prayer time with you and Holy Spirit, and He's showing you different parts of you that you need to call back forth, call back from that relationship because you had a soul tie with that person. Do you know when you have a soul tie with that person, they get parts of your soul, and you got to call those parts of your soul back and reclaim those parts of your soul back because they never supposed to have a part of your soul. God never, He did not design sex for relationships far as out of marriage. He designed it for marriage. Why you think in the Bible, it tells us that Sarah and Adam became one, or, this person and this person became one. They became one when they had sex. And they did not become one when they walked down the aisle. So once you understand this, then you'll be able to see it from of a perspective that this person got parts of my virtue, this person got part of my soul, and I need it back. But I was listening to her name is Beth Tucker, Beverly Tucker. She's a minister. She's out there in Chicago. She's an inner healing and deliverance minister. And what that is, she helps people walk through or call back to their souls that's locked into places. And she talked about this on one show, and I thought it was so powerful. A young lady had an abortion, and the young lady she now walked the young lady through a process of calling her the part of her soul was still stuck on this table from having abortion after she repented and renounced and came out. Because when you have an abortion, you are now in agreement with a spirit named Morlock, right? And after she renounced and she came out of agreement with the spirit of Morlock, She repented and asked God to forgive her. She came out of agreement with the spirit of Morlock, then rebuilding or reclaiming. She called her soul back from out of that room, and she allowed her to walk her out of that room and allowed her soul to become reattached again, or the biblical term, whole. So parts of you are stuck in places. That's why you like, man, I don't remember that. It's parts of you that have been broken out through soul fragmentation, that through prayer, if you partner with the Holy Spirit, He will allow you to integrate and make those parts of you whole again. Okay? One of the prayers that she said is God integrate her from, I forgot what age she was, integrate her from whatever time you had that event. God integrate her or grow her up from that age on up. So I'm gonna give you an example for my life. I lost a baby at 14 years old. That was a part of my soul that God had went through. I went through healing. But I talked about this in another podcast. But if you didn't hear about it, I'm gonna talk about it today. For 30 days straight, God allowed me to cry. For 30 whole days straight, I cried and cried and cried. And I didn't understand what I was crying until after the fact, God allowed me to grieve a child that a event that I suppressed for 15 years. God took me back to reclaim that because that part of me has stole so much of my time, right? So then at 16 years old, I had my first child at 16. So a lot of parts of me that I supposed to have, like life skills, maturity, and emotions, that was cut off because that became a traumatic event in my life because I had this baby at 16 years old. So now I had to go from being a teenager to a mom overnight, and a lot of things inside of me was not mature yet or had not fully developed. So I didn't even have the mind frame of an adult. I had a mind frame of a child trying to raise a child. So then God allowed me to go through a process, giving me life skills, how to budget money, self-confidence, self-respect. He allowed me to go through that process of reclaiming those years that I had lost, parts of my soul that was broken off. And then, of course, I was in an abusive relationship for 13 years. So it was parts of my soul through that toxic relationship. I was still having dreams of this man, me being in different rooms with him. So what was it? It was a part of my soul that was still tied to him that I had to go through a season of God healing me and breaking that soul tie. And that was a soul fragmentation. I had to call my soul back from me out of rooms that I was still stuck in him in. I know there's a little lot. And you probably thinking like, I didn't even know this can happen, but it can when you go through trauma, right? So realign. Let's talk about it. You're realigning with God's biblical perspectives and His beliefs about you. So you have a belief that you developed in trauma. Then you have a belief of what your parents think about you, but then you have God's beliefs, which is the truth. That's why He said, "The truth shall set you free." Because when you start believing what God say about you, baby, you start having an inner freedom that you stop caring about what everybody thinks. Like, I don't care what none of y'all think, baby. God accept me. God love me. I'm His favorite child. You start thinking like that, and you start gaining a freedom to not no more living for other people, no longer living for yourself, but you start living for God. And God, I die, and God, I live. But that has to be a process because you in trauma. When you go through trauma, that is an entry door for the enemy to come in and sit inside your soul. Yeah, those demons call you their house, and you develop their mindsets. You develop their habits because they was in your house. They was in your soul. That's why you have to be delivered, right? You have to go through a season of deliverance. I don't care how long you've been in the kingdom. Baby, you gotta go through deliverance because those spirits had your soul. Okay? And you develop perspectives, you develop beliefs based off those spirits. And you trying to figure out why you got these appetites. These spirits come with appetites. They come with appetites. They come with beliefs. They come with perspectives. A lot of people, they make jokes about having sex in a dream. That's the spirit you having sex with when you masturbate. That's a spirit. You got a spirit spouse, and you thinking you having sex with yourself. You're having sex with another spirit when you masturbate. You have to go through a season of deliverance for that. So you realigning with God's perspective, how He see you, how He wants you to see the world, and how he and the beliefs that he wants you to have about yourself and about your future, about your money, and about him. But it's too many people out here that's having code. That's why he tells us, do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed through renewing of your mind. Do you know you have some beliefs? That's how generational curses start. It starts with recording, right? What do I mean by that? You have generations that come before you that do certain things a certain way, and that's why the Bible tells us that a path that seems right to a man but leads to death. It seems right to you, but it leads to death, right? So what do I mean by that? That means that a bloodline have a culture of beliefs that's not biblical sound, and they go through generations down, and by the time they get to the fourth generation, now they have this thing that's stuck when actuality God never gave it to them. I'm gonna give you an example. My pastor told us this story. I thought it was so powerful, I wanted to talk about it too. He said that back in the day it was his family, and it was like the third generation or the fourth generation by the time somebody asked a question. The daughter asked the mother, hey, why do we cut the butt off the ham? And she's like, I don't know, my mama did it. I just started doing it too. So the daughter called her mom, which was the daughter grandmother, and said, hey mom, why do we cut the butt off the ham? She's like, I don't know why y'all do it, but I cut it off because I didn't have a dish that was big enough at the time for the hams. I just cut it off. So they have been following a custom or a belief for 3 or 4 generations when they all started with she did not have enough room inside of this dish to either to cook the ham. So not everybody done followed along with the grandma when the whole time the grandma just didn't have enough to finish off the meal, y'all. So what am I saying? You have to begin to real the shedding process is you realigning with heaven and no longer living for other people. Because if you find yourself steady living for other people, you will never be to the point that you will be satisfied in what God have called you to do because you're too busy trying to live for them that you're not living for Him. So He had to see you through a process of rediscovery so you will begin to align with heaven and no longer align with hell. And then He positions you. He positions you to prosper. Think about it. When Esther, she went through a process of becoming, it's actually a chapter in the Bible where it says Esther becomes queen. And her process, she had to go through a 6 months of Miriam, which was Miriam was used back in the day for dead bodies, where they had to clean the body of um of they used it for the embalming fluid back in the day. So then at that season, they used the Miriam from for Esther, and the interpretation I got from that is shedding off the old Esther, because Esther was raised by her uncle. She was an orphan. She was raised by her uncle, and her mom and her dad was dead. So you can only imagine the mindset that she had, that she was an orphan raised by her uncle. You can only imagine the intimidation and the fear and all the stuff that she was under before she went through the process of becoming queen. So now she went from being an orphan, staying with her uncle, to now in a palace. She had to position herself to save the jewels because if she did not step up, her whole lineage would have went down. So the process positioned her to prosper. What process that God wants you in to rediscover who you are so he can position you to prosper for such a time as this. The process will not be wasted. I'm reminded of Moses. When Moses was in the wilderness, was he there for a long time? Moses was there for a long time. Moses didn't get used by God to about 70, 80 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. But do y'all know that he wrote the 2, 3 chapters of the Old Testament? The wilderness was not wasted. Your wilderness season is not wasted. Stop explaining your season to other people that don't understand it because you don't even understand it. I've been in the process, baby, for about 7 years. I don't even understand what God is doing. So for me to go explain it to somebody else as if I owe them that needs to be shedded. Because you don't owe nobody an explanation when God put you where he put you at. Okay? So that's what I have for you today on Rediscover Her, Rebuilding Her Life After Trauma, shedding off the old you to reclaim and realign with who God have called you to be. I am hosting a masterclass March 30th, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and I will put the link under this video if you would like to register. I would love to have you, and I will give you some tips on how you can begin to rediscover who you are so you can walk in your authentic self. Thank you so much for joining, and until next time, peace.